Hi Tom, welcome back to 10 by 6, the first one of 2022, is it?
Yeah, indeed. Nice to see you, Jace. Hello, everyone. Lovely to see you all. Nice to be back again. We haven't done this for a little while, so good to be back on it.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. And another year ahead. I'm not quite sure how different it'll be from the last year or how different it'll be from the following year, but we'll do our best to do what we do.
I'm fully expecting to continue to be shafted by the ruling class.
Yes. Yeah, well, you can change any number of 2022, can't you? You can change the first number to 5, and that'll still be the case, unfortunately, if humans are still around and they haven't stood up and done anything about it. But there you are. There you are. Yeah. Right, there's only one topic, I think, dictating discussion at this particular week. We are going to try and move away from the corporate media-led reactionary analysis in future weeks, but I think we do need to start and set the tone for what's been going on now for the best part of over 2 years, well over 2 years, and that's the lies, and surprisingly the lies. So what's your first take on it, Tom?
Well, we often say there's no democracy without truth. And that's I believe that's the case. We clearly have a government that have a phobia around the truth. They're very resistant to telling the truth, and they're very well versed in lying. They're also utterly corrupt, so they use a system of lies, which almost becomes second nature to someone like Boris Johnson. That they just from a ruling class background and Eton education, that they just use lies to cover up any sort of sense of responsibility or to take responsibility for their actions. They just lie and cover up as a matter of course. And this government have obviously been acting utterly corruptly in giving vast sums of money, transferring vast wealth from the poor and ordinary people of this country to the richest 1%, who they act on behalf of. That's just been clearer and clearer and clearer. The pandemic has made that even clearer than ever, that's all they're about, this Conservative government. And they're using more and more lies to cover up those criminal acts. And they are criminal acts. The Good Law Project in particular is holding this government to account by taking them to court over their corrupt giving of vast sums of money through corrupt COVID contracts to their friends, families, mates and donors, who then give some of it back to them again. So hurrah for the Good Law Project. And I think the public need to see that this is an utterly corrupt government used to using lies to cover up their corruption. And for everyone in those red wall seats that for once lent their votes to the Tories, Labour voters all their lives that lent their votes to the Tories, mostly to so-called get Brexit done. I think now they've all woken up to the fact that they're, what the Tories are about. Hopefully all those people have seen that they should never have lent their vote to these lying, corrupt Tory robbers.
But I think probably you're being a little bit over-optimistic, Tom. I think 2024, they probably won't have an 80-seat majority, and they may well lose the election. But you'll still find well over 10 million people will vote Conservative. And one of the phrases that I've noticed that's cropped up across social media in the last few months, referring to those people now who just blindly sympathise or blindly defend the Conservative Party, is the Walking Dead. And the first instinct I have when I sort of hear that is, okay, what you're then generally referring to then is a group of people who are behaving like zombies. They're going around with absolutely no emotional intelligence, no empathy, and they don't really care about the impact of how the Conservative Party, what it has upon other people. They only really care about how it impacts upon themselves. But interestingly, I was having a conversation, and I won't go into obviously names, but I was having a conversation with some people last week, and they generally had always voted Conservative. And I sort of basically got into a conversation with them, and they actually said, we've now realised for the first time, and this is not a defence of the Labour Party, but he said, we've now realised for the first time we were better off under Labour. And that Labour we're talking about, of course, is Tony Blair and Gordon Brown. So the point isn't about the fact that they were better off under Labour. The point is that these particular individuals had actually started to contemplate and think about the impact of the vote that they cast all of this time. And they've begun to realise that by voting just for themselves, they were still, the recognition was that even the vote that they'd made for themselves had turned out wrong.
Mhm.
So I think what we need to be building upon, Tom, you and I, and many, many other people, because we are the majority, remember, the majority do not vote Conservative. What we need to start recognizing and getting people to recognize is that once you start to do a little bit of open-minded analysis, you actually find that all this time you've been cheated.
Yeah.
And you cheated yourself by not giving it the thought. And I think that's really, really, really important. At the end of the day, what these 10 by 6s, and I think what many, many people out there, all they really want people to do is to start to be a bit more open-minded, start to think, because I think they want that they perceive that once we start doing that on a much grander scale, the Conservative Party are toast.
And for me, one of the biggest issues there is what is, to my mind, the most influential big lie of the last 30 odd years in British politics, which is the lie that Labour overspent on public services and landed the nation in a crippling debt forevermore. I mean, the Tories used that lie to get elected in 2010 and have used it at every election ever since. They've used it to, when, even in the last election in 2019, the fourth election since 2010, they were still, when they were criticised over austerity and their vicious, evil austerity cuts, their murderous cuts to benefits and welfare, and including for people with disabilities, cruel and inhuman was how that was described by the UN rapporteur investigating it. Cruel and inhuman treatment and cuts of the benefit system, and destruction of our public services. And they've done all that on the basis of austerity. And whenever they're challenged about that, they still, in 2019, were saying, well, we had to make the difficult decisions because Labour left the country's finances in a mess. Just a huge lie, just an enormous, fat, huge lie that was sold to the British public in 2010. And it's meant the Tories have been in power for 11 plus years ever since.
But I think we need to make sure that the people tuning into this, the listeners, understand. In 2010, the debt in this country, and we can go into a sophisticated economic discussion, which we're not going to do, but the debt that was left this country as a result of the bailing out of the banks because of the casino capitalism that had taken place, which the Conservative Party in itself voted for, and were putting pressure upon the Blair and Brown governments to open up the access to debt even more. But the debt in 2010 was 800 billion. It is now 2.2 trillion, and that isn't taking into account any penny spent during COVID by this government. So we need to make it clear, okay, that you can repeat a lie often enough, fair enough. But when you start to do a little bit of research, when you start to open your mind up a little bit and do a little bit of investigation, you start to see those lies giving you a bloody nose. And you then have to respond appropriately. And I think
Absolutely.
that's really, really, really important.
And just going on from that, there are economists, serious, very well respected economists have described the last dozen years, last 11, 12 years in this country, as the biggest transfer of wealth from the poor to the rich ever in our nation's history. The last 11 years. They're extracting all the wealth and all the money and giving it to the 1%. That's all this Conservative government are about. It's the only way that they've treated the pandemic over the last 2 years, is an opportunity to extract even more public funds and give it to their rich mates.
Yeah,
and lie about it.
And I think to wrap up today, what we need to be very, very, very clear about also is that all of that money that they increased, all that wealth that they increased in the period between 2010 and 2019, they have doubled during COVID. Because almost all of the money that was given by us, the taxpayer, through the government to support people and companies and businesses during COVID has been sucked up to the top by the owners and the CEOs and the shareholders. That is a really, really, really important point. And I did an interview with Rod Driver, the academic and economist, earlier in the week, and he explains the whole process. So please go on to 10x6. You will see how the international finance system works and how it works in every aspect against us.
And before we finish, Jay, can I just say that, you know, what we need, obviously, you know, Boris Johnson's time is now up. It's limited. He's very, very likely to go in the near future. But of course, that won't solve everyone's problem. Yes, of course, we want Boris Johnson to go because he's a lying charlatan and completely incapable of being prime minister. But he'll only be replaced by another member of the ruling class who will continue to shaft ordinary people. And so what we really need is absolute system change. You know, like the climate change protesters say, system change, not climate change, is what is required if we're to save the planet. And likewise in this country, for the good of our nation, for the good of the people of this country, we need entire system change. We don't just need a change of prime minister. We don't just even need a change of political party, given that the Labour Party are now, you know, very much right of centre as a party, not even left of centre. So, you know, whether it's changing to proportional representation, whether it's a complete system change where the mega rich people that control the politicians, you know, who are their puppets, the hedge fund managers and the media moguls who actually, you know, control everything, whether we find a way to make sure they don't wield the power they have. One way or another, what we need is not just a change of prime minister, not even maybe a change of political party in government, but a whole new system of governance that puts people first, not profits.
Yeah, and I think everybody who watches 10x6 from this moment on should really be expecting that narrative from us and from many of our guests, not all of them, but many of our guests, because ultimately we can stay in the sewer or we can climb out of the sewer. And you've expertly identified how we get out of the sewer, and that is for systemic change, not to keep being reactionary against personalities and establishment puppets. Brilliant. Have a great week, Tom. Thank you, everybody, for watching. Take care, and I'll see you next week.
Take care, Jace. Bye.